Good morning, students, and welcome to the final video of the at-home learning session for weeks 9 and 10. It's going to be the last section of teaching that we're going to do for this school year, and so we're just going to go over a few pages to review, go over some lessons and themes that we're going to finish up on for the school year, and then go ahead and look at some of the questions to answer and do the first one together using the rule strategy. And then what we'll do is finish up, and then you can go ahead at your earliest submission, answer the questions and submit it, and that'll be your final assignment in science for this year. So if we look here at the top, it says label the food chain below as a producer, predator, or prey. And the last few times since we've been doing this, we've learned what a producer, predator, and prey are. And so if we want to take notes again, we're going to go ahead and label the producer will be makes its own food. It can create its own food source. Predator eats organisms, and then prey is eaten by the predator. So it's the food source for another source of animal or plant. And so if we look here by these definitions, the sun always is important on anything we've learned in science. Anything that has to do with a cycle or so always seems to start with the sun as the biggest form of energy. One thing you'll notice too is the arrows all point to the right, going toward the sun, to the grass, the grasshopper, snake, and hawk. The energy flow is going and being used by the grass, therefore that the grass is taking energy from the sun. Where then the grasshopper eats the grass, so the grass is the energy source for the grasshopper. The snake is the next source, or the predator of the grasshopper, which means the grasshopper is being the energy source for the snake. Or the final step here, or you see the last animal, is the hawk, and that means that the snake is eaten to provide energy for the hawk. And so if we're labeling these, you're going to look at here, the sun and these lines, we're going to put producer for grass, because plants are producers and they do make their own food. You can sit here and say that we have predator, prey. Grasshopper, although it eats grass, I wouldn't particularly say it's a predator. I would say that it's prey because it does eat grass as a source, but it is the only prey for the snake. And we can put that the snake and the hawk are both predators because they do eat animals as shown here in the food chain as a source of energy. So if we look here at the grasslands food chains, you see that we have the frog for the grasshopper, you have the grass for the sun, grasshopper for the grass, the hawk for the frog and snakes for frog and grasshoppers. If we're looking at this model, we saw at the top arrow that the arrow points to what is eating the energy source. So in this sense, we would have the frog not pointing to the grasshopper. We would have the grasshopper pointing to the frog, because this is the energy source which is going to be eaten by the frog. The sun uses energy from, the grass uses energy from the sun, so that energy source is providing the grass with energy. The grass provides energy for the grasshopper, the frog and snake provides energy for the hawk, and the frog and grasshopper provide energy for the snakes. And so if we're looking at the model here, you see that the sun is one example of the energy source, again, of the grass. And this is then the model of what we just saw up top, but you see that it follows the same explanation. And so one thing you always want to remember is the arrow always points to the source that is using the energy or getting energy from. So if it's the sun, there's no arrow that will ever point to the sun, because the sun's not getting energy from any living creature. The sun is always going to provide energy for every living creature, as the plants will sometimes provide energy for an insect or smaller animal, and predators will always have another animal source to eat for their energy source as well. And so we look here, it says the sun gives energy to the grass to make its own food. And if the sun's never pictured in the photo, always remember that the sun is part of a food web. So in any source or not, you can always draw the sun, and the sun gives some energy to some living organism in your food web. And again, the grass gives energy to the grasshopper. Then you have the snake and the hawk. And if you notice here, you have the frog that has no arrows to it. And so what you want to look at is the arrows pointing to the grass. And so what we're going to do is add arrows to the frog based on a predator or prey scenario. So if I'm thinking of the hawk, I would assume that the hawk probably or possibly could eat the frog. Therefore, if I'm going to draw the arrow, I'm going to just draw the line to connect, because that could be part of its diet. If I look at the snake can also eat the frog, and we're going to draw a line, and we'll give the arrow tip in a little bit. And then we can look here, and we can look at the grasshopper, which would probably be the source of energy for the frog. And so if the frog is eating the grasshopper, that means that the arrow point is not pointing toward the grasshopper, it's actually pointing toward the frog. And if we're looking at the frog is the energy source for the snake, therefore the arrow is not pointing to the frog, because the frog is not going to eat the snake, so therefore the frog provides energy for the snake. And the same with the hawk. The frog will not eat the hawk, therefore its energy source will be pointing toward. So this would be a complete food web now, because you're having all the sources of energy pointed in the correct direction. And here you have it says draw the food chains that include the grasshopper. And so you can draw here the producers, the predator and prey. And so if you want to just redraw or illustrate your design based on what they're asking you to do with the grasshopper. And so whatever it is you illustrate or how you illustrate it is totally up to you. But here's an example of a standard form of the word. And then they also give you the illustration of that word so you know exactly what it could look like. Well, one thing you want to know about a chain is a one pathway of energy in an ecosystem. So anything you think of a chain, it always connects, it's got little links, and it's always in the same direction. Energy always provided by the sun, that's always important. And you have the arrows that are pointing toward the source of the organism that is getting the energy from the other organism. Want to remember that preys are animals that are hunting and catching other animals for food, while the prey is hunted by other predators. And some animals can also be predators and or prey. The food web is more of a intricate design. It's got more chains instead of just one flowing chain. The food chain occurs, or the food web, in different types of ecosystems. So depending on what part of your ecosystem depends on if the web is used or the chain is used. When two animals eat the same food, they compete to survive. That is called a competition. So if you look at this map here that we did, you can see that our areas here, well, there's no grasshopper, but we can just try to draw. You can see that our arrows match with what we drew earlier, so this is kind of a good check for you to check to see if you had the right map of the food web that was blank that filled in here to make sure that you got it correct. These QR codes are really good to show a food chain, comparative food chain and food web. And so clicking on the link on your computer, or if you have the packet, just get a phone if you're available to, or a pad, and get a QR reader and then pull up the links here. And then if you want to here, just circle the organism in the food based on what you find here with the color. And you also have another word bank that you can do and describe the flow of energy with the sun. So if you start with the sun here and draw this out, this should be pretty easy because we've seen these animals or these types of animals in our food web or food chain on the previous slides. You can use the blanks here to use also for words that we've gone through for these last pages, and this will help you with just more of your vocabulary matching. Here you've got a full map. And you've got an alligator, an egret, a snake, a minnow, insects, algae, and the sun. And what they want you to do down here is look at the animal that's labeled. So the alligator is where we're focused to. And you see that there's 3 arrows pointing to the alligator, which means these 3 organisms are food sources for this alligator that are providing energy for this animal. And so you take these 3 names and you would fill them out here. That way you kind of have an understanding of which ones are which, what animals are the food chain here. You see that you have an arrow pointing to the egret, so there's only one source of food for the egret, and that would be the minnows. Insects, you've got only, again, one form of energy, the algae and the grasses, or plants. So I guess it's more than one, but these are all different names for the same thing. And the minnows have the same algae, grass. We don't have to put plants again, but they also have insects as part of their diet. And the water snake looks like it only has minnows. So this particular animal just eats fish. Alright, last page. First question of our assignment. If we look here for our assignment, it says a student researches food chains and writes a paragraph to describe the desert food chain. So we're in the desert here, so we know that the climate's pretty hot, pretty arid, lots of sand, lots of animals that are going to be using or needing lots of water or fluid or have adapted to their resources. And so it says mesquite trees use energy from the sun to produce their own food. Okay, so just by this, we need to know that mesquite trees, energy, and the sun produce their own food. With the way that reads, that means that the sun will have to be labeled first, and the mesquite tree will have the arrow pointing toward it because it's using the sun's energy to survive. So you're going to look down here in your answer choices for sun and mesquite tree. And here's a clue for anything that you've done over any subject period or any science period. Since we've done and labeled our 1 point, we can actually go ahead now and look to see what the question's asking us. And now, like I've always taught this year, if we're going to try to make it very elementary and kindergarten work, we're going to try to make it very simplistic as well. So what we're going to do is look for this exact match in our answer choice. Because if it doesn't start with this, it's wrong. So if I look here, we have the arrow pointing to mesquite. And if I look at A, it's pointing to sun. This right here automatically is incorrect. So A is incorrect. Roadrunner doesn't start with that. So if I look here, Roadrunner is not the sun, because it says here last Roadrunner should be. So the Roadrunner should be here. And so we have sun, arrow pointing to the tree, and we have the Roadrunner last, then the rattlesnake, then the kangaroo, then the mesquite tree. So even though we had not known D yet, we know that C is the correct answer. And so because it's pointing anyway right there, D would be our incorrect answer. Guys, go ahead and try the last 4 of them on your own. I guarantee that you'll do really well, just as you had been doing on the last few weeks of it. It's been my pleasure to have done these at-home learnings with you. Any questions or comments that you may have, just reach out by Zoom, text, email, or call. And look forward to seeing your works and submission. And I truly enjoyed teaching you for this entire 2020-2019 school year, and I hope you have a really good, safe summer, and look to see you back in 5th sometime next year. Thanks so much, and have a great day, guys.